All right, deep divers, welcome back. Lock and load, because today we're diving headfirst into a true classic, Contra.
Ooh, Contra. We're talking alien wars, insane power-ups, and a level of challenge that would make even the toughest space marine sweat.
Seriously, this is a series that does not mess around. But hey, that's part of its charm, right? Those hardcore retro vibes and the satisfaction of finally conquering that ridiculously hard boss.
Absolutely. It's that classic arcade formula, but perfected. Two commandos, Bill and Lance, facing impossible odds and blasting their way through hordes of enemies. It just doesn't get more 80s action hero than that.
Okay, but let's back up a bit for anyone who might not be familiar with this legendary series. What exactly makes Contra so iconic? I mean, it's known for being brutally difficult. Why did players keep coming back for more punishment?
Well, it's definitely not for the faint of heart, but Contra's difficulty is part of its appeal. It's that feeling of accomplishment when you finally overcome a challenge that seemed impossible. Like, remember that fire-spinning statue in the first game? Pure nightmare fuel. But when we mastered the timing, it's like you've unlocked a secret level of gaming nirvana.
Oh, don't remind me about that statue. I think I still have nightmares about it. But yeah, you're right. There's something so satisfying about finally taking down that boss or making it through that insane level without dying.
Exactly. It's a test of skill, reflexes, and pure determination. And when you succeed, oh man, that feeling is unbeatable. And let's not forget those iconic weapon upgrades. The spread gun, the laser, those glorious homing missiles, each one feels so powerful and satisfying to use. They completely change your approach to each encounter.
Oh yeah, the power-ups. Though I have to admit there were times when I accidentally picked up the wrong one and got stuck with the Weasley default gun. Talk about a test of patience.
Oh, for sure. One wrong move and you're back to square one, facing down a screen full of enemies with nothing but your trusty pea shooter. But even with those moments of frustration, the game always felt fair. Your success depended entirely on your skill, not on cheap tricks or random chance. And that's what kept players hooked.
Okay, but let's talk about something that's definitely not fair. The Contra timeline. We're talking sequels, prequels, alternate realities. It's a tangled mess that could make even the most diehard fan scratch their head.
Oh, absolutely. It's a wild ride through the Contra multiverse. We've got games set in the distant future, others that hint at a more present-day setting, and then there's that one game that throws time travel into the mix.
Wait, time travel? Did I miss a memo somewhere? When did Contra become Back to the Future?
Yeah, it's a whole thing, and it gets even more confusing when you factor in the American and European releases. They often took liberties with the original Japanese continuity, changing locations, adding backstories, even replacing entire characters.
So basically, trying to piece together the true Contra timeline is like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded.
That's a great analogy. It's a challenge, for sure, but there's a certain charm to unraveling all the inconsistencies and ultimate realities. And despite all the twists and turns, there are some core elements that tie the whole series together. Those intense action sequences, the memorable characters, and that signature Contra attitude that's pure 80s action movie gold.
Speaking of characters, we've got to talk about the legendary Bill Reiser and his partner in crime, Lance Bean. Those guys are basically the Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone of the video game world.
They're the ultimate action hero duo, tough, resourceful, always ready to face down any threat, whether it's an alien overlord or a rogue military faction. And their designs, iconic. Those bandanas, the bulging muscles, they just scream badass.
You know, it's interesting how their roles and even their fates have changed over the years. Bill's a constant, the face of the franchise, but Lance kind of fades into the background as the series goes on. It's like the developers couldn't decide what to do with him.
You're right. Lance's story is a bit of a mystery. Some games feature him prominently, others barely mention him. And then there are those later games where Bill's actions get called into question, like accusations of war crimes and stuff.
War crimes. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. It sounds like there's a lot more to Bill Reiser than meets the eye. And speaking of twists, we haven't even touched on the European version of Contra the Pro Protector series. You know, where the humans are robots and things get, well, a little strange.
Ah, yes, Pro Protector. That's a whole other rabbit hole of censorship and creative adaptation. Get ready for robots awkwardly mimicking human movements, alien bosses redesigned as giant mechanical spiders, and a whole lot of head-scratching moments. But hey, that's part of what makes the Contra universe so fascinating, right?
Absolutely. But before we get too lost in the Contra multiverse, there's one more thing we need to address. Those spin-off games that tried to break the mold, for better or worse.
Oh yeah, those daring experiments that took Contra in some wild new directions. Some landed with a bang, while others, well, let's just say they added a unique flavor to the Contra legacy. Buckle up, deep divers, because things are about to get wild. So you mentioned spin-offs. where should we even begin?
Well, how about we rewind to the golden age of arcades and revisit a true classic, Super Contra.
Oh, yeah, Super Contra. Not just a sequel, it really upped the ante. More enemies, those crazy vertical levels, and the weapon upgrades. So strategic.
Oh, man, the memories. Pumping quarter after quarter into that arcade cabinet. The intensity was insane, especially with those top-down levels. You really felt like you were in the middle of an all-out war.
Totally. Those were like mini games within Contra, almost like a nod to those classic arcade games, like what was like Ikari Warriors.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and they even kept that same energy when it came to the NES as Super C. Right? Oh, and that final boss, terrifying.
Pure nightmare fuel. It really felt like the developers squeezed every ounce of power out of the NES to capture that same arcade feeling.
Speaking of squeezing out power, how about Contra 3, the alien wars on the Super Nintendo? Those Mode 7 effects, the massive bosses, and you could carry two weapons at once. Mind-blowing.
Contra 3 was a game changer. I mean, just think about it. Mode 7, for those who don't know, was this groundbreaking technique that allowed the SNES to create those pseudo-3D effects. Suddenly, you had backgrounds that were scaling, rotating, creating this incredible sense of depth and speed, perfect for those insane motorbike levels.
Oh man, those motorbike levels, what a rush. Though if I'm being honest, they always felt a little out of place in a Contra game. I mean, where did those futuristic bikes even come from?
Yeah, you got a point. But hey, I guess when you're battling alien invaders, anything goes, right? But it's that willingness to experiment that kept the series feeling fresh, kind of exciting. Contra 3 didn't just rest on its laurels. It pushed the limits of what a 16-bit game could even do. And the music. Oh, that soundtrack.
Okay, yes. Pure adrenaline-pumping synth glory. It's funny, though, because for as much as Contra 3 pushed the boundaries, I think Contra 4 on the Nintendo DS was a brilliant throwback, don't you think? They brought back that classic 2D gameplay with a few modern twists.
Contra 4 was a total love letter to the fans. The grappling hook, for example, added so much to the level design. You could swing across those huge chasms, reach secret areas, even use it to surprise enemies. Plus, they brought back those pseudo 3D tunnel stages. They always kind of creeped me out, but in a good way.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was that perfect mix of old school vibes with something new and exciting. It's too bad not all the Contra games were able to hit that sweet spot. We have to talk about those black sheets of the Contra family.
You mean the rebels, the outliers, the games that just dared to be different? You know, I actually have a soft spot for some of them, like Contra Force, for example. Clunky.
Yes.
Did that squad-based approach really work? Oh, really? But it was ambitious?
Maybe it was just ahead of its time. I mean, we're so used to games now that let you customize your squad and your playstyle. Maybe Contra Force was just trying to do that, but well, the technology back then just wasn't quite there yet.
Yeah, I think you're right. But then you have, the Contra Adventure. What do you think? That was a bit rough, right?
Oh, see. The Contra Adventure was a rough one for sure. Trying to go 3D did not work out so well. The camera angles were all over the place. The controls felt stiff. It just didn't have that classic Contra charm at all. Like they learned all the wrong lessons from those early 3D platformers.
It really did feel like they were chasing trends instead of sticking to what made Contra great. Which is a shame because there are some pretty cool ideas in there, like the branching paths and different gameplay styles. It just didn't all come together the way it should have.
Right. Makes you appreciate those later 3D Contra games like Shattered Soldier and Neo Contra even more. They actually managed to nail the 3D Contra experience.
I'm with you there. Shattered Soldier felt like a proper sequel to Contra 3. The graphics were amazing. The difficulty, brutal, just how we like it. And it had that same over-the-top action that we all love about Contra.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And then there's Neo Contra. That one took more of an arcade-inspired approach. Huge bosses. Even some twin-stick shooter elements.
Neo Contra was definitely a throw everything at the wall and see what sticks kind of game. But you know what? It worked. Intense, chaotic, and totally unforgettable. And it's those bold choices that kept the series going, even when things got a little experimental.
For sure. And that brings us to the more recent Contra games like Contra, Rogue Core, and of course we can't forget the remake of Contra, Operation Galuga. I think those games show that Contra is still alive and kicking, even after all these years.
You know, Rogue Core got a lot of hate for being so over the top and kind of straying from the classic Contra formula, but I thought it was a fun, chaotic mess. It didn't take itself too seriously and had that same go big or go home energy that I love about Contra.
I'm right there with it. I think it was a pretty divisive entry, but I appreciate that it tried something new. And that Operation Galuga remake, it was like a masterclass in modernizing a classic. They kept the core gameplay, gave it a fresh coat of paint, added a few new mechanics, and kept that signature Contra challenge.
It just goes to show that there's always a place for that classic run-and-gun action, even in today's gaming world. It's a testament to the enduring power of the core Contra formula.
It really is. Looking back at all these games, from those humble arcade beginnings to those wild experiments in the 3D era, it's amazing how much Contra has evolved.
It's a series that has never been afraid to try new things, to push the boundaries. And through it all, it's never lost that signature Contra spirit. The intense action, the over-the-top spectacle, and most importantly, the pure, unadulterated fun.
It's crazy to think how a game about two dudes shooting aliens has had such a huge impact on gaming, even pop culture. I mean, the Konami code, that's practically a universal cheat code at this point.
Seriously, you see it everywhere. Movies, TV shows, websites, it's like a secret handshake for, people who get it.
And don't even get me started on those visuals. Muscular heroes, alien planets, explosions everywhere. It's like it was ripped straight out of an 80s action movie.
Oh, 100%. You can definitely see Contra's DNA in movies like Predator and Aliens. That whole gritty, fighting against impossible odds, that really resonates with people. And it's not just the visuals, the themes of survival, facing down these huge threats. Contra really tapped into something timeless there.
It's funny, though, for all the seriousness, that intensity, Contra never really took itself too seriously. There's always that layer of absurdity, that over-the-top energy that keeps it fun.
It's so true. The developers knew they were making something kind of ridiculous and just embraced it. I think that self-awareness is a big part of what makes Contra so appealing. It's like winking at the player, We're all in on the joke.
Yeah, but beyond all the jokes and memes, Contra really does offer something special. It's that pure sense of fun. That feeling of beating the odds.
That feeling when you finally take down that boss that's been giving you nightmares, or you nail that pixel-perfect jump that you've been practicing for hours. It's such a rush.
It is. And that sense of fun, that commitment to giving players a real challenge but making it rewarding, that's what's kept Contra going for so long. It's a reminder that sometimes the simplest ideas are the best. Give players some guns, some bad guys to shoot at, a ton of explosions, and just let the mayhem begin.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Contra, what do you think is the biggest takeaway? What makes this series so special, and why should people check it out?
Well, I think it comes down to this. Contra is more than just a game. It's a cultural icon, a symbol of all those awesome 80s games, and it really shows how powerful a fun game can be. It's a series that's always changing, trying new things, but it never takes itself too seriously. And I think most importantly, it reminds us that no matter how tough things get, how impossible the odds may seem, there's always a chance to fight back, to win, even if it takes a few continues to get there.
Well said. For anyone out there who hasn't experienced Contra, I highly recommend giving it a shot. It might just become your new favorite action game. And for all you veterans out there, those die-hard fans who have been with the series since the beginning, keep those spread guns ready. The Contra universe is massive. There are always new challenges waiting, new secrets to find, and new memories to make.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Contra. And remember, stay Contra. Until next time.